All right. Hi, Kate.
Look it up.
Are we live?
I believe so.
Okay. Hello.
Hello. I would like to fully disclose that we've never met before, and so far we've been chatting for about 4 or 5 minutes, and I'm kind of delightful and delighted to have met you. So I propositioned you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Let me just, I feel like I'm doing accepting an award. I'm going to say some thank yous. So actually, let's first thank our mutual friend, Midley,
Yes.
who introduced us. I had her on my podcast, and she mentioned her menopause doula. And on the side, sort of like Second Spring book and Kate Codrington. And I go, what? Second Spring, what? Because my podcast is called Second Spring.
Mhm.
Um, and then yes, and then I would like to thank you for reaching out and making the time to do this. And then I mean, it's still thanking you for the book because I have been listening to your first book. I know the second one is coming out, and we'll talk all about that. Um, I am learning so much, and I'm feeling like you're giving me permission to do a lot of things. So we'll talk about all of
Job
that.
done then.
Yeah. Want to start? Let's start by having you introduce yourself to the people.
Okay. So I'm 58. I'm white, cis female. I live in just northwest of London in the UK,
Hmm.
and I'm in my second spring, by which I mean I'm post-menopause.
Hmm.
Um, I can no longer remember when I last had a period, but I'm pretty sure I was about 51. So I'm 6, 7 years into or more into postmenopausal life. And as a person who is or who menopause now in this particular juncture in time, there is more permission to be conscious and present with our transition than there has been before. And more privilege, I think. I think privilege has to do with it too,
Hmm.
certainly. So I'd like to name that too. And I am an observer of ageism and of the misogyny that mostly wrecks our midlife, and the fear and the feeling of being not enough and forever having to chase busyness and chase our to-do lists, that is just wearing us out.
Hmm.
So that's the long answer. The shorter answer is that my job is as a menopause. I work mostly with menopause and postmenopause and perimenopause. I'm a mentor. I have a background in body psychotherapy, so it's mostly body orientated process work and in the liminal realm. So using structures that dive in. I can't give a short answer, can I? Using structures
We have all
that
the time.
that dive into that dive beneath the everyday surface affairs into the patterns and the archetypes that are moving us and the seasons that we're moving through. So that's um, yoga nidra,
Hmm.
kind of guided meditation, and also medicine circles, which take us through the seasons.
Mm.
Yeah, and I'm a facilitator. I like to talk. Do you notice that? I like to
I
talk a
love
lot
it.
about
I
this
love
stuff.
it.
And I'm a writer. I have the second spring, and there's a journal coming out soon. And yeah, those are the things that I do, pretty much.
So I'm going to assume that you haven't always done this work. And so my curiosity is, what were you doing before this work
Yeah,
called for you?
yeah. Well, I think I was I think in my mid 20s I did a kind of about change from an artistic um, path to what the hell's going on with me path. And why
Mm,
does it hurt path? And why do I feel so
mm,
disconnected and lonely? Mm,
mm,
other path. And I kind of sort of entirely self-serving. It's all about me, trying to figure myself out. And that took me through learning massage and healing, Reiki healing, and then into body psychotherapy. And then I had, yeah, that got me into a relationship. All that therapy and all that all those trainings. And then I had kids, and I woke up to the lack of support and the disconnection that happens around pregnancy and birth, and how unintegrated we are, and how
mhm.
complicated it is being a parent, being a mother, coming and change that rite of passage. So I then trained and worked with shiatsu and Western techniques and posture and movement and stuff for pregnancy and postnatal.
Mhm.
And then I found myself crashing on the shore of perimenopause, going, but what?
What is
So
this?
that, what the hell? So
Mm,
that started a whole new investigation through, and that my roots was through belly massage, womb massage, or
mm,
uh, sacral, all that, the sort of the very core of being human, really, the cradle of humanness.
yeah.
And through that into womb yoga and Uma Dinsmore Tuli's work and Yoga Nidra and Red School. There we go.
Mm.
Red School are educators. They educate around menstruality, around periods and menopause. Mm.
Are you still doing the body work stuff?
No, I don't. I seldom work with body work, but I almost always use, because I work on Zoom a lot,
Mhm,
but and most of that is trying to support people to get a felt sense of their wisdom. I think
mhm, mhm,
a lot of that. So the bit in them that feels like home, the bit in them
mhm.
that feels like a root, like a reliable crucible that fills with goodness,
Yep.
or feeling their yes and no. And I'm a, if you go to a body worker, they kind of
Mhm,
work on the body. If you go to a yoga class, it tends to be run by very bendy people who think bendier is better,
mm,
you know?
mm,
So that's my, I often do that, but that's not for everybody. For
mhm.
some people, it's not safe to start to feel their body.
Yep.
It feels like a dangerous badland. So we find other
Mhm,
ways. We
mhm,
felt get a felt sense of home through imagery or connection or drawing or poetry or movement or something else that would, yeah. I think it's very important for well-being people not to be too rigid in how they how they think people should connect, because
yeah,
who are we to know?
yeah, I cannot agree more. And yeah, with the work that I've been doing, the last couple of decades, it's always true that everybody needs something different.
Mm,
The same acupuncture points that I use for people is not going to always do the same thing. And they might actually charge something different in different people's bodies. So I agree. And yeah, there's nothing better than teaching or helping someone to find what works for them.
yeah,
And most people don't like the fact that there's no formula, that we're not going to give them exactly what will work for them. But yeah, the work is to find out for each individual what's the right thing. I mean, we do overlap, right? A lot of us can agree on some things, but yeah, I recently, speaking of womb and the core of our being, I started doing Pilates recently, or shall I say, I attempted Pilates. And I I had this resistance for a long time. Like, give me yoga, give me any other sort of movement, and I'll do it. But yeah, Pilates, I resisted for a long time. And I'm still resisting, actually, now that we're talking about it. The first session, the instructor wanted me to feel the different section of my abdomen. Have you heard of this? Have you done Pilates? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
It's totally fine. You you don't ever need to do it, but so she, divided the abdomen into four quadrants,
Yeah.
upper, lower upper, whatever. And she wanted me to feel each quadrant separately. And I have sort of always avoided working on my core. Like, again, I'll work on my arms and legs and all the other parts of the body, but when it comes to like the core work, I I I resist. So, and I think there are reasons for that. But anyway, so she's teaching me how, and the breathing, and focusing, and the mind, the body connection. And Kate, within 15 minutes, I started crying because not I was frustrated, one, because I couldn't really feel what she wanted me to feel. Um, and then she asked some questions, some very simple questions like, were you pregnant? Did you have kids? And all these things. And and yeah, and I had twins. The pregnancy was pretty eventful towards the end, and the body's been probably not wanting to go back to that time of life. So that's the emotional piece. And then there's a physical piece of, well, if I ignore working on it or engaging it, then I'm not going to be able to really feel those muscles. And um, so it's just sort of fascinating how one, we're not taught how to connect the mind and the body, right? And how we a lot of times live. Somebody said this is not mine, but somebody said we live north of our neck line 99% of the time. So this work of, what you said, coming home to your body, feeling at home in yourself is foreign to a lot of us, but it is, I think, the most important work for this phase of life, this second spring that, I'm entering and you've been in. And, for a lot of women to sort of acknowledge that this is coming and maybe preparing for it. And then when they're in it, really working on embracing it.
Mm, absolutely. And I would go further. And I would say that the process of perimenopause, so the bit when you're still bleeding or you think you might bleed, forces you into your body. That's I like to look at menopause transition with different kinds of lenses. And one of the lenses is you are forced to look in your body. You are forced to feel. And the more you resist, the more you keep on going and you pretend, and the more that you're like this and looking for a solution to shut up the terrible noise of the
Yeah.
disobedient body, the rebel body, which is the name of an
Mhm.
excellent book by Sarah Thing, whose name I can't remember, but I'll find out.
Hmm.
Um, the louder it shouts.
Right. And the more we don't like it. And so there's this dissonance between this vehicle that we drag around and live in and what we think about it.
Yeah, that this vehicle that we drag around called our home.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm just writing down the rebel body.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I'll find the author for you.
yeah, and then we can put links everywhere.
Yeah,
So I know we've just sort of dove deep into
yeah.
second.
We didn't waste any time, did
We
we?
did not. I don't know how to do small talk, but I want to back up a little bit because I love the way you organize your book, Second Spring, into different seasons.
Mhm.
And okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are four. the first one is separation, then surrender, emergence, and then second spring.
Mm-hmm.
Would you kind of quickly, not, as take as much time as you need, but go over each of the seasons of this chapter of life?
I will. I'm going to frame it within a context of annual seasons of spring, summer, autumn, winter first, so people get a
Mhm.
sense of that. So if you think about spring and summer, they are increasingly expansive.
Yep.
They're about moving out into the world more and more towards solstice, summer solstice. And then from the summer solstice to the winter solstice, through autumn and winter, we come back in and we put on our jumpers and our hats and sit
Yep.
by the fire. And these seasons also express the seasons of the menstrual cycle. So spring being post-menstruation, ovulation being summer, the
Mhm.
autumn being premenstruum, and winter being the menstruation. And the seasons of our lives. So in our lives, spring would be from your first period through to the summer, the estrogen filled, all multitasking summer of our 20s and 30s. And perimenopause, that time when we come inwards towards the hearth, is perimenopause.
Mhm.
And the winter of a deep menopause, and second spring coming into a new cycle. So
Mhm.
that that places our desire to run from the hills, burn the house down, abandon the kids, jack in the job, murder the partner, um, I don't know, drive the car over a cliff, anything else catastrophic you fancy doing.
Mhm.
That is a natural result of our focus changing from an external focus where where others, the world is centered as the focus of our importance. Come autumn, we start to feel more and more strongly that our needs are important. It's a natural corrective. And that's why I believe a lot of the difficulty comes from, because we don't recognize that fact, because we think we should be ever giving, ever loving, ever summery forever and ever. And goodness knows the world would love it if we were.
And it
So
would
these,
kind of be boring too, right? If we just keep doing the same things over and over.
well, we wouldn't have a sense of self. And we'd all have very, very tight jaws. We'd all totally know.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So this autumn and wintering, the second half of the cycle, is a natural and essential part. Otherwise, we turn into Donald Trump. We get bigger and bigger and bigger and more armored, and we come back in. So it's really essential. And for many of us, myself included, just remembering this when I feel exhausted and furious is
Mm.
helpful. Oh, it's an autumnal season. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So what do I need in autumn? Yeah, quiet, more space, a bit of a slower pace, not too much stimulation, external stimulation, turn off my socials, you know. Anyway, so that's the bigger picture. And then sitting within these phases that you're talking about, the separation, the surrender, and the emergence and second spring are the phases of the menopause process in the broadest sense, and they're placed in autumn and winter. So when you get that feeling, as I mentioned about myself earlier, that hang on, something's odd, something is different here, and I don't understand what it is. That's the call into autumn,
Mm-hmm.
and into separation. And essentially, it does what it says on the tin. It invites you to separate from the world.
Mm-hmm.
And wouldn't it be lovely if we could just do that? You know, we could just
We
go
could
off.
try.
Well, we can try, and we should,
Mm-hmm.
to give
Yeah.
ourselves that permission.
So you're saying, as far as this transition from perimenopause to postmenopause, the peri is the separation, the fall, the starting to feel like something is going on.
Yeah.
And that could take a long time for some people, right?
Yep. Up to a decade.
Yeah.
even.
Okay, and then fall into winter,
Mhm.
and you're
Yeah, the winter brings. So okay, this isn't just like my terms and conditions here. This is an archetypal map.
mhm,
So nobody ever looks like this and proceeds
right.
like a monopoly
Yeah, nothing is linear.
politely through the seats. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
this is a guide to what you might be feeling, and
yeah,
obviously, because we're human, we go backwards and forwards, and we feel different stuff all the time. Okay,
yep.
but there is a place when after you've been in separation and you have basically fought and refused to let go of what doesn't serve you.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
it has to be this way. So you're as soon as you slightly lift a few fingers from the edge of the thing that you're holding onto, whatever that is, we start to move into a more surrendered place. And
Mm-hmm.
this is a place where we can start to feel glimmers of self compassion and care and rest so that we can just fall back into more towards a place of contentment with not knowing.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're going from the kind of strong identity healthy ego of summer through to all the way through menopause to a new way of being, how to be learning how to be an elder, learning how to care for a more vulnerable body as we age, then we have to let go of who we thought we were before we can move on to something new. And there is necessarily in that process a period of I don't know, of just not knowing.
Yes. And
And
being
that kills us.
okay. Yes. But then being okay with not knowing.
That's something that we have to learn. And if cis men had menopause, they'd all be sitting on stages in spiritual centers demonstrating how marvelous it was. This is big girl pants, serious spiritual workup. We're sort of we're worked by
Yeah.
menopause process.
Yeah.
And then we have to sit and not know. And this is hard stuff for human beings, and particularly
Mhm.
at this point in history, to be with not knowing. It takes huge courage and support and community.
Yeah. And to be expected to still do all the things that women are expected to do, you know? Yeah, it makes it doubly, triply hard to be in that place of uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
So then emergence, tell us about
Yes,
emergence.
yeah. The emergence is more towards the end of menopause process, and that will be when you start to feel um, more resourced. So that might be more energy, that might be
Mhm.
ideas.
Mm.
I asked my business partner, what was it like when I was in menopause? And she said, you just said no to everything.
Oh, okay.
I was like, oh, and then she said, yeah. And then when you got to the end of that, you started to say yes.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
you shut out, you say no to everything, you shut everything out. And then the emergence part is when you're going, oh, well, I wonder that little project. And oh,
Yep.
that would be nice to go
Mm.
and talk to so and so about something. And that
Mm.
our appetite for life
Mm.
returns. It's a bit like when there's a sunny day where I am in London. It would be a sunny day in early February,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
the witch hazel starts to bloom, and you start to smell.
Mhm.
My partner starts to sneeze because the hazel is
He's allergic.
because he's allergic to pollen.
Mhm.
But it's those warm days when you start to remember what it might be like to open your chest into the sunshine or something like that.
Yeah.
And the trick then is, of course, is that, oh, right, menopause is done. La la, I'm back to normal. Off I go, full speed. And then we fall flat on our faces.
Yeah.
So the task in emergence is to receive.
Mm.
And, you
Mm.
know,
Okay. So I am, well, as we just said, right? Nothing is linear. It's not going to go one, two, three,
Yeah,
four.
yeah.
We go back and forth, and sometimes we go, we find ourselves in maybe in the fall again. But just to bring my own current experience. So I'm almost 49,
Mhm.
and the last period I had, I remember exactly the day.
Wow.
Um, because I had that regular period and then I got COVID, my like first COVID and the only one up to now. And I haven't had a period since then. So that's over a year ago. So I'm definitely, yeah, I kind of cross over, but still in that in between surrender and emergence because I have what you're talking about, is saying no a lot, but I'm starting to get the glimpses of, ooh, that's exciting. That's interesting. Um, starting to feel creative again. But then there are days when I'm like, nope, not gonna do anything. So I feel like that's the surrender emergence, the winter and spring can kind of can toggle, right? And be in
Yes.
that way for a while.
Yeah, really for a while. And I mean, I noticed over the last 6, 7 years, I mean, people in perimenopause, you can put your fingers over your ears and go, la, 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 because you probably won't want to hear it. And
Yep.
because while it's an entirely different country post menopause, there's also a lot of vulnerability there too, because
Mhm.
we're so new.
Mm.
If you if you rewind back into that separation, that autumn time of just peeling off layers, and there's another layer, and
Mhm.
haven't I done enough? No, more layers have to come off, more
Yep.
beliefs, more roles, more identities, more duties, and foisted responsibilities that are just not suiting us anymore. And then we process and rest and maybe fill ourselves up, hopefully, a bit. And then we come into a second spring. And then we're like blinking in the light, going, well, in the old days, I used to rush out and, I don't know, set up an event and call in all my friends and get my colleagues together, and we'd cook up a blah blah project, and it would all go. And that you can't do it that way anymore.
Mm.
Can't be going rushing around. So how do you show up vulnerably and well resourced and serve your community in the way that you want to without depleting yourself? It's a very vulnerable and wibbly wobbly place.
Yeah. And I want you to touch on some of that, the practices that you talk about in your book. Um, because it is about not doing what you used to do
Right.
because yeah, that same energy is not, well, some might, but the majority of the way things were will not work now in this next phase. Okay, so let's go over from emergence to second spring, and then I want to talk about what we can do
Yeah.
to make it more easeful. So
Mhm.
tell us about second spring, that phase.
It has a lot in common with our teenage phase of spring. So there's a
Hmm.
lot of finding out who we are, and particularly now because we I barely feel middle aged, which is ridiculous, seeing as I'm nearly 60. But nevertheless, it's the case. So how do I operate?
Hmm.
I don't know. Yeah, when yeah, how well, you can see I lose my words.
Hmm.
I'm not sure. I just show up and get on with it and try not to think about it too much, because it's just too hard to think about that stuff. So there's a kind of devil may care, a kind of courage that
Hmm.
comes. And interestingly, I learned that it's an evolutionary need for teenagers to um, to be uh, to like taking risks. because
Yeah.
they it's important for them to take risks. Otherwise, they'd never leave home and try and have sexual partners. And
Yep.
the baby birds have to jump out of the nest. And there's
Yeah.
something of that in second spring as well. And I think it's because it's one of the many advantages of lower estrogen that
Mm-hmm.
we don't care so much.
Mm-hmm.
That we're more willing to take risks with our social nervous system. It doesn't matter so much. We don't give so much importance to how things look and our status and that kind of thing. And that's essential for us to forge new pathways to use our talents for good to change the world for the better. And that would include another great thing about lower estrogen is collaboration. Is that
Mm.
the sort of rivalry, the competitiveness, the comparisons
Mm-hmm.
between women, particularly, which blight us all through our lives because of patriarchy and misogyny and the way everything's set up, are considerably less with lower estrogen. So there are more healthful collaborations and cooperatives to be made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as you're talking, I'm really trying to draw the comparisons between the first spring, which,
Mm.
the menarche, the tween years, 12, 13, 14, depending on the person. And then and then the second spring. And yeah, the similarities, I can see the energy of you're blossoming into somebody that you weren't quite before. The difference is the first spring, you're doing it subconscious, like unconsciously. You're kind of like you're just blooming. It doesn't, um, without intention. And with a second spring, we're doing it intentionally with who we want to be with, how we want to think, what we want to do, and it's with wisdom now. It's with all the experiences and the failure and the everything else that we've had up until now. So in some ways, this is so much more fun than the first time, right?
I think the key ingredient is the knowledge of mortality. That's the difference. That's the difference because we know in our teenage years we feel we're infinite, even if
Yep,
even if we feel when we feel wibbly, we don't really believe that we can be hurt.
we don't.
Hopefully,
Yep.
hopefully. By the second spring,
Hmm.
we know our time is limited. We know we are fragile.
Mm.
We know
And
we are also strong as well, but
mm.
we're aware of that vulnerability. And that gives us, I think that provides a lot of the wisdom because it brings in more compassion for ourselves, potentially, and for the world.
Hmm. And we get more discerning about how to spend our time.
It's intolerable not
Hmm.
to be, it's
Hmm.
intolerable to be in spaces that are toxic. And that perimenopause teaches us that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go there since you brought it up already. So one of the practices that you recommended in the book is to write a letter from our deathbed. Tell us
Yeah.
about that.
Well, I think that the contemplation of end of life is one of the most healthful things that we can do because it gives us perspective. We're
Mm.
so caught up in the everyday, in our current challenges, and in the busyness and in the demands that we have in our life. And from it very simply gives us perspective onto the
Mm.
whole of our lives. And of course, I now can't remember what the recommendations are. There was some very famous research done by an end of life
Mm.
nurse looking at what the top regrets are. Have you come across that?
Yep, yep. The five top
Do you
regrets
remember
of the
what they
dying.
are?
I don't remember off the top of my head,
It
but
was
that is
stuff like
part of where I am with my brain.
it was stuff
My
like
brain fog.
not telling people that you love them,
Mm,
not spending more time playing.
mm.
Um, we'll look. That's another link.
Yes. Top five regrets.
We'll go find it. Top regrets, yeah.
Um,
And buckets and buckets of compassion.
mm,
So much compassion and admiration for just surviving. I think as well. Often when people do this process, they begin to see that having got through the challenges that they faced through their life to this point, they've done really well
mhm.
with the perspective. Where at the time we're like, oh God, I messed up, and it's, I should be like this, that, or the other. But we constantly underestimate the damage and the wounding that we've received, and
Yeah.
give ourselves no slack for it, no kindness.
Yeah. Being very self-critical is something that can, knowing that we will die, and is it serving us to beat ourselves up constantly
Mm.
about everything, can
Yeah.
probably, be something we need to minimize or get rid of. Steve Jobs, before he passed, do you know this? I think one of the things he said was, knowing that we will die is the best gift that we can give ourselves. Because he was dying, and that's exactly what he was doing, was going over what he did not feel he needed to do, and yeah, just being retrospective about
Yeah.
his life.
Feeling the preciousness that, that quote from Steve Jobs is just encapsulates the preciousness,
Hmm.
the fragility of life.
Yeah, yeah, of every day.
Mm.
Okay, so letter from our deathbed. The other thing you said that I agree with, and I wish I could do this more, except that I don't live alone, is to Marie Kondo your life.
Oh, so
Want to,
if you could do that, what would that look like for you? What does that mean?
oh, Kate. Um, it would look like downsizing everything. It would look like, um, I mean, truly like getting rid of 80-90% of the things that I have. I mean, things. I'm in my son's room right now. So these aren't necessarily my things, but I would get rid of his things too, since he's in college and he doesn't live here. Like, why do we have things? Why do we have, the books that we'll never read again, or clothes that we don't wear? And I mean, you can name, everything. But I feel like in we could Marie Kondo things, like tangible things and stuff in our life, but we can also Marie Kondo all sorts of other aspects of our life to feel less heavy and burdened. And we can even Marie Kondo our beliefs about stuff.
Yeah. There's, if you fill in the dots, I'm the sort of person who block, block, dots their house, or I'm the sort of person who dots in a relationship, or we're very attached to being the helpful friend, or
Mm,
the kind parent, or the person who's always perky and suggesting a social, or I don't know, the person with a clean house, or I don't, there's
mhm,
endless kinds of ways which we're holding onto a bit of identity like that, that really
mhm,
don't serve us. And those are the sorts of things that go when we don't, when our energy is low. And energy tends to be lower
mhm.
in autumnal places, in our perimenopause.
Yeah,
And that teaches us really clearly what is important and what is not.
yeah. Have you Marie Kondoed your life in the last few years?
I'm a bit overdue.
Mm,
I think I did a good wardrobe clear out about a year ago, but I've been looking around my office and thinking, I don't like this. So look out, books. Uh, I'm coming for you.
Well, we can go in phases. We don't have to like overhaul the whole thing at the same time.
Well, it's dangerous. Once I got going, that
Hmm.
once I start, it turns into a bit of a tornado. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I did chuck out journals that I rather wished that I kept at one time.
Mm. I did that a while ago. I used to keep like a daily journal for years from the time
Mm,
I was in high school. And I went back to read them, some of them, not all. And and they were so what's the right word? I was actually sort of embarrassed reading them, honestly, because I would just write about everything and anything and things that didn't, you know, what I ate and who I saw and what movie I saw. So I knew that I didn't want to get rid of all the journals,
mm,
but I think I sort of just blindly said, all right, from, when I was 14 to 16, gone.
mm.
I don't need that. Um, so yeah, so am I regretting that right now? Not yet, but maybe someday I will. And I think part of me was like, well, I don't know if I really want my kids to see this after I die.
Yeah, they definitely don't want to look at the ones from
Do
my
they
30s.
really need to know? Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about another practice that you recommend, and this is something that is close to my heart because I work with a lot of clients around this, which is food.
Mm.
Food around this time of life.
Oh my goodness.
And
It's really charged. Let's just name it. Food is really charged, and we
mm,
mistake food for love
hmm
and comfort, and we use it in all sorts of ways, emotional ways that have nothing to do with nourishment.
yeah, yeah.
So acknowledging, I think the first place to come to is to acknowledge that changing our patterns around food is greater than the sum of its parts. We are likely to come across difficult feelings, and
Mm,
particularly early childhood
hmm
irrational
Yes,
today.
yes. Well, what I like to say and remind myself all the time is the challenge that we think around food is actually not about the food, but
So
but but our beliefs about the food, our attachment, our sentiments. Yeah, because food is food. Food is inanimate. It's not, it doesn't have any feelings. So, when we say we have a relationship with food, it's a one-way relationship with
one-way
food.
relationship.
It's like, having a boyfriend or girlfriend who's like a plant, right?
It sounds like internet dating.
Yeah. And it
Or
doesn't even,
Bumble. Do you have Bumble where you are?
I think, yeah, I think I've
Okay.
heard Bumble. Um, but the yes, the charge that we get is really the relationship we have with ourselves,
Mm.
that includes food. And sometimes it doesn't even include food. So anywho, I heard you in your book say that you in particular never wanted to be told what to eat and when to eat and how to
No,
eat. Okay.
no.
I am the same way, Kate.
Hate it. I hate
As
it.
soon as you tell me like you should have this and how much of this, and I immediately rebel. So I hear you and I'm with you.
Yeah, there's something very sanctimonious that often creeps into food,
Yeah.
and something, there's something very very body shaming that lies just underneath it about
Oh,
lack of willpower, which we know is a myth. That
it's
doesn't
a
exist. It's all made up.
it's all it's,
Uh,
yes.
the, well, it just
So
kind of lurks.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
so much of all these things are made up anyway, and a huge part of diet culture that unfortunately
don't get me started.
we swim in, right? But let's get out of like the emotional part of food and talk about it from a more I guess factual,
Yeah,
hormonal, biological, side of things,
yeah,
if we may. It does matter. It does matter, maybe not 100% of the time, but sometimes, especially when the hormones are shifting and the body is responding to that. It does matter what we eat and how much and when. Um, so there's that.
there is that. There is that. And another lens that I can put on perimenopause is that it's a time of sensitivity.
Hmm.
We are more sensitive to everything. So, you know, the news, emotions,
Yep.
stimulation, stress, the whole thing, and also food. So while you may have been able to eat sort of lots of sugar and refined carbs in your
Hmm.
30s, you will likely have more reaction now.
Yep.
And it's, you know, the recommendations for food in perimenopause is not complicated. You already know this stuff. You
Yep.
already know what you need to do. It's Mediterranean diet, more whole foods, good fats,
Fiber,
lots of
vegetables.
fiber,
Yep.
vegetables, a range of vegetables, as many vegetables as you can possibly squeeze in,
Yep.
and stay hydrated. And that's kind of it.
Yep. Now the trick is that we we just need to do it. We know these things. We just have to incorporate it
Yeah,
into, to make it more of a habit than information out there that, you know what? This is the other thing that I love in your book is change the shoulds into the coulds,
yeah.
right? Like instead of keep saying like I should do this, just like I can do this. I am going to do this. So I think that's the biggest thing about nutrition in this time of life.
Yeah, to open the door to possibility of something different happening. So
Hmm.
I'm a great believer in tiny, tiny, tiny little steps.
Yep. Same.
So, you know, I should, if you're starting out, I should eat more healthily. I should
Hmm.
eat more whole food. Then what you could do is add some seeds on top of your salad or cereal or toast or whatever.
Yep.
So there's this brilliant inquiry, what could I add to my food? It's told to me by Neve Daly, yoga trainer, and she said, what can you add? So that I have like get me. I have some freeze dried broccoli sprouts, so I don't even have to sprout the little critters. They're just there, so I can add, yeah, and I feel sanctimonious just telling you about it. I'm sorry, too smug, too smug for face ache. Sorry, face ache. I'm gonna get you knocked off smug, overly smug with my little broccoli sprouts.
No, you're exemplifying what second spring a woman can do, right? Yeah. Yeah. Who's gonna, why sprout the things when you can just, shortcut
Yeah,
it?
when
Hmm.
you have the shortcut. So
Yeah.
there's about adding something to, so that might be, you know, that was a bit of a fancy, ridiculous example, but you could eat an apple
Hmm.
well, you know, so it's absolutely nothing to do about deprivation. Don't deprive yourself.
Yeah.
Absolutely never do that.
Yeah.
But you can
Agreed.
add in more nourishment
Yes. Agreed.
in a way that is easy and palatable for you, a little bit more.
Yeah.
And over time, over time, as you have more nourishment, it becomes easier to say no to the things that are toxic for you, whatever your thing is.
Yeah, I, you know, I'm with you. I think any change is going to be very scary to the brain, to the primitive brain that thinks that we're gonna die for sure if we don't eat a vegetable today, you know, something bad's gonna happen. So um go take our time, which is also your message throughout the book, is taking more time, like giving ourselves time to do anything and sometimes nothing, which freaks me out, Kate, when I think there was a moment in there, you're like, practice, don't do anything. I'm like,
Oh,
I'm like, oh, what do you mean?
yeah,
I
isn't that
think,
interesting? Huh?
yeah.
Isn't that interesting? It's just such a
Oh,
profoundly challenging thing.
it is. And it is one of the most important things is to be in stillness. Um anyway, being tangent now. Uh but yes, take it slow. Any change will take time. Um and be back to being kind to ourselves,
Yeah,
because as soon as we aren't, as soon as the inner critic comes out and, you know,
cortisol spikes.
everything, right? The cortisol, the glucose, and likely we'll start self-sabotaging and doing the things that will make everything worse.
Mm, mm,
So you know, I see that in my client population who are very self-critical, have very high expectations, you know, perfectionists. And what do they tend to do is, you know, not being able to cross everything off or being disappointed with themselves. And what will they do? They will drink more at night. They will grab, you know, 5 cookies. They will, you know, you name it, right? The habits that everybody knows is not serving, but they will go towards that when the inner critic is driving the bus. That's how I say
yeah,
it. Is
yeah, yeah. So, should we talk a bit about inner critics, seeing as that's, that's
please, please.
central to everything, everyday life, right? Get
Everyday
up.
life.
Oh,
Yes, but I feel like this time, you know, the second spring chapter, the inner critic kind of has to take a back seat or you know, be really irrelevant.
So there are different ways to achieve that because
Mhm.
we all have inner critics. It's pretty much human standard, and the critics are parts of ourselves that want to be heard, and they want, believe it or not, they're actually trying to care for us. that's
Mhm.
that's that's their role. That their job is to keep us safe, but they're like super 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 safe. Like,
Yeah.
don't put your head above the parapet,
Yeah.
don't say anything,
Yeah.
definitely don't wear that dress, and your ankles are too fat for those shoes, and your ass looks funny, so stop, just stop, stay home, don't go out, you know
Yes.
so that we're safe, so that we're not hurt, because we have stood up in the world before and felt some shame.
Mm-hmm.
So shutting them up doesn't always work, like
Mm-hmm.
slamming the door on them. So it's always worth having a go at um, having a dialogue with them in some shape or form. So you mentioned you have morning. Did you say you had morning pages, or did I dream that? No, you were talking about your journal.
Journal, but I have done morning pages. I know,
Yeah.
yes. I know
So
that.
writing out a conversation with your inner critic. So really giving
Mm.
them space to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and that way you can at least hear it,
Mm-hmm. So it is
acknowledge.
heard. Yeah. Yep.
You can acknowledge the cruelty,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps, and acknowledge also the energy that is there,
Mm-hmm.
because we're constantly exhausted, somewhere between tired, exhausted, and endlessly fatigued.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that is to do with suppressing this kind of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
allowing this kind of dialogue to happen gives us more energy, it releases more energy. So writing the dialogue may or may not be helpful for you. You can then burn the piece of paper, you can throw it up and throw it to the winds, or compost it, or put it away and look at it again, check it
Mhm.
out, see if it's real. You can write back to the inner critic. You can
Mhm.
call in that wise elder,
Mhm.
or if you don't have one of your own, you can imagine,
Mhm.
use one from fiction or a movie to come in
Mhm.
and tell the inner critic what is actually going on.
Mhm.
So that's something that can work for some people. But again, people are very unique. Sometimes some people do just slam the door. And sometimes, like when I'm writing, for people who have creative practice will know that the inner critic is the enemy of creativity, because it stops us playing and mucking about.
Mhm.
So when I'm making something, the inner critic has to go away. And I do slam the door and lock it up and say, no, this is not your time. She has to sit on my mantelpiece over there and do something interesting by herself while I'm writing this, because I cannot edit and write at the same time.
Do you have a
So
name for your inner critic?
I don't know. I don't. There are so many of
Some,
them.
what's that?
There's so many of them.
Yeah, it was a,
The
well,
posse.
I've heard that sometimes it's helpful to
Yeah.
name,
Yeah.
um, to be able to separate our, there's so many parts of us, right? You've heard of the family system, internal family system.
Huh?
So many parts of us, and it's helpful to recognize that that part, the inner critic, is not really who we are,
Yes.
and therefore, you know, letting it like drive the bus or take control doesn't mean that we're that version, that we're not a bad person or a mean person or undisciplined or whatever that the inner critic is trying to
Yeah. The,
uh
pur- the purpose of
yes.
writing this dialogue out is to
Yep.
create
Yep.
separation, so that
Yep.
we get to look at it and think, well, that's completely unreasonable.
Yep.
That's really unkind. I wouldn't treat my best friend like that.
Right.
This is something else. And I do
Yep.
not choose to inhabit that part of myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, a couple more things before I let you go, because I think that this part is really important and something that I'm on the verge, or I'm in the middle of creating, and that is this new identity,
Mm.
in this chapter. And I know it's not like, ta-da, I'm complete, I have a new name, I am whatever, people can do whatever they want, but it's this permission to be to be someone that you really want to be, and being able to, I guess it might be, in the marketing terms, like we can rebrand ourselves, in this stage, because of all the things that we talked about, that we are using our wisdom to not be as critical, doing what we want to do, saying no more often, all those things, right? So we're sort of not the same person that we were.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how can we do that in the most easeful
Oh,
way, Kate?
oh, I think having role models really helps.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at, well, who do I want to be when I grow up? And that, often for many of us, we may not have those kind of role models in our birth family. So
Mm-hmm.
looking wider into films and fiction, and obviously I love writers. So
Mm-hmm.
I think, well, what would Margaret Atwood do right now?
Mm.
You
Yeah.
know, how could I, and looking at the qualities of these people and thinking, what are these qualities and how can I embody that today?
Mm.
So for me, with Margaret Atwood, she is really cutting and sharp. She's really
Mm-hmm.
precise in the
Mm-hmm.
way, her viewpoint and the way she expresses herself, but with a
Mm-hmm.
lot of compassion. And that's a combination that I love, and I try to emulate. So
Mm-hmm.
how can I move closer towards that? Or you can kind of have fun and sort of, what pair of shoes would Margaret Atwood wear today?
Mm-hmm.
Coming back to that teen self and the experimentation. Well, who am I now? Am I a goth this week, or am I an emo kid, or whatever? You can dress up. You know,
Yeah.
you can go to the charity shop and buy secondhand clothes and dress up in a different way and put them on and maybe
Mm.
leave the house and maybe feel into
Mm-hmm.
how is it to express myself in this way. You know, it can be
Mm-hmm.
really playful.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I like that. Yeah. And literally try something new on, like a new shade of lipstick or glasses or a new hairdo and
Mhm.
things that are um not permanent. I
Yeah.
mean, some people might get a tattoo.
Mhm. Many people. I'm about the only untattooed person of my age in my neighborhood.
Yeah. 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 Okay. So I like those ideas. And then tell us about this art, the practice of journaling,
Mm,
because I know that that's close to your heart and mine, and you're coming out with a journal that we can all
yeah.
use.
Yes. Thank you for bringing in the journal. There's a real advantage because everything's very chaotic and overwhelming. There's a real advantage to honing in on one thing.
Hmm. Agreed. Marie Kondo.
To Marie Kondo, and having that one thing be, how can I be kind to myself? How can I care for
Mm,
myself? You know, we all have
mm,
our own phrase or version that is meaningful, and that essentially the journal is asking you to focus on how you can care for yourself each day.
mm,
It has a seasonal focus, so it explains in the journal how to recognize whether you're in spring or summer or autumn or
mhm,
winter, and how to, and with sort of serving suggestions of how to care for that.
mm,
So each month there's an invitation to set an intention. There's a um, intention setting meditation.
mhm,
So that might be to give myself more space, or it might be
mhm,
to notice when my inner critic shows up,
mhm,
or it might be to ground myself in the present, or you know, whatever intention is useful for you. And then you check in with your intention every day. There's a little space to write down your intention because repetition works. And
100%.
then at the end of the month, there's a space to reflect on what got in the way, where the wheels fell off the bus, what went
Mhm.
right, and how you can be more compassionate towards yourself next time.
Mm.
So
So, yeah.
it's really simple. It's a really simple idea, but it's, whereas in the world, menopause is this chaotic, fear-driven, rage-driven scramble to be fixed and to shut
Mhm,
everything down and to shut down expression. This journal is like a cozy nest for you to explore, how can I deepen into kindness? Because
mhm.
essentially that prepares you for your elderhood.
Love it.
So it's much bigger. It's much big. Yeah, you know, hopefully
Mhm,
you'll eat
mhm.
better things and be kinder and go
Yeah.
slower and rest more and treat yourself more nicely, and your symptoms will improve.
Yep.
But I have an agenda. I have an agenda.
You do? What is
Yeah,
it?
it's a crack army of elder females to sort the bloody world out.
Oh, so you're really wanting us to all kind of congregate, be more at ease with ourselves, and then we change the world.
Yeah,
Okay, that's
way
fair.
that is sustainable for us,
Yes.
rather
Well,
than giving our energy away endlessly until we.
yeah. Well, I sense there's a revolution happening. There's
Mm,
there's an energy. Um, and we keep saying that the younger generations are gonna change the world, but we're still here
mm.
and quite capable of making lots of changes. So
Yeah,
we
and there's such an opportunity for intergenerational
yes.
feeding, and I think again, with a consciousness of second spring and second summer, there's a real opportunity to bring everybody together, because, you know, like the orca, like the grandmother orcas,
Yep.
that's what they do.
Yeah. All right. You and me, let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just have a big pond in between us, but you know, why not? When is the journal coming out and how can we do everything with you?
Oh, bless you. Thank you. Well, it's
Mhm.
out on the 10th of September
Okay.
in the UK. It's a bit later in the States, but if you
Hmm.
pre-order a copy, you get a golden ticket to the Rage Against the Patriarchy disco.
Wait, say that again.
Yeah, I could see you going.
Wait, if we pre-order, what do we
If you
get?
pre-order a copy of the journal, which
Okay.
I've got one here. There you go. There it is.
Oh,
Very
beautiful.
beautiful. Oh yeah, that's the thing. I forgot to say. It's extraordinarily beautiful.
It really is. I just want to have one just to have one.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, they've done an amazing job on the design. But if
Okay.
you pre-order one of those,
Yes.
then I'm having a book launch, Rage Against the Patriarchy Disco.
Okay, where, when?
It's on Zoom, so
Oh,
everybody can
Kate, you
come.
have to say no, it's in London, so I have to come to London.
Well, it is kind of in London. You can come and
Okay. All right.
dance in my office with
I
me.
could. I could. Okay, so when is the book launch?
6 p.m. UK on the 10th of September.
Oh, on the day that it comes out.
On the day that it comes out, we
Amazing.
dance awkwardly, badly,
Okay, well, we're supposed to.
ragefully.
Yes, I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's it. We pre-order. And then do you know when the US version is gonna be
It's
available?
usually about a month later. So
Okay.
I would say beginning of October,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not
Okay.
sure. But I can keep you updated on that.
Okay. And if we people want to learn more about your work and get in touch and be in your sphere, where are you in that world?
Well, you can go to my website where there is actually a rather fantastic resource library of yoga nidra guided meditations, and
Hmm.
there are visual guides to the seasons, charts of the seasons, so you can stick them on your fridge and say, "Look, mate, that's where I am in that autumn," so you can see visually where
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah,
There's
we
all
can
kinds
just
of
point to it to our partner if, we don't want to talk there.
stuff there. Ooh.
So your
Yes, and
website.
yeah, website. That's Kate Codrington, CODRINGTON.co.uk.
Hmm.
And I'm mostly on Instagram, which is Kate_Codrington.
Okay. And then are you doing one-on-one with people for the mentoring or what's
Actually,
the
I'm kind of at capacity at the moment, so I'm kind of.
okay.
But what I do have for people that are interested in the seasons and really want to find that grounding and map and reassurance that and validation that their feelings are correct, by the way,
Mhm.
they are. That's for free.
Right.
Uh,
Yes. You're
there's an
welcome.
online course called the Perimenopause Starter Kit, and that will take you through the seasons. There's an audio, so you can listen to it while you're on a walk, and it will
Hmm.
show you how to chart your
Hmm.
perimenopause with the seasons and with the moon, so that you can find some anchoring
Hmm.
and deepen into how you can care for yourself. And there's a whole loads of bonuses and resources that go along with that, with more yoga nidras and sort of a curated collection of audio
Hmm.
and video that will give you the information about food and, metabolism and all that kind of stuff too.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I'll put all the links in the comments and things. And this has been so much fun, Kate.
Hasn't
Thank
it?
you.
Thank
Yes.
you so much for saying yes.
Oh, same. This is I think one of the beauty of this phase too is well, this is what I say is like it's either a hell yes or it's a heck no. So this was an easy one. So thank you.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
yeah, and there'll be more second spring what do you call it? Collaborations, I'm sure, to
Yeah,
come.
absolutely. Yeah, well, try and stop us.
Try to stop us. Everybody try to stop. It's not going to happen. All right. But goodbye for today, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Bye.
Okay. Bye, Kate.